Hello everyone, welcome back. I am Dr. T.S. Hazaria and today we are talking on diabetes mellitus. This is part 2 and here we will talk about the diagnosis and management of diabetes mellitus. As in part 1 we talk about the introduction, etiology and prevalence, clinical features and complications. So before we start, please do subscribe the channel for all latest updates. So first we will begin with the diagnosis in diabetic patient. So glucose tolerance is classified into three broad categories like normal glucose homeostasis, diabetes mellitus and pre-diabetes impaired glucose homeostasis. This glucose tolerance can be assessed using three tests: fasting plasma glucose, response to oral glucose challenge or OGTT, oral glucose tolerance test which is gold standard to diagnose type 2 diabetes mellitus, and lastly hemoglobin A1C, HbA1c, right? So one FPG fasting plasma glucose of less than 5.6 millimole per liter or 100 milligram deciliter, a plasma glucose of less than 140 milligram per deciliter following an oral glucose challenge test, and one HbA1c of less than 5.7% are considered to define normal glucose tolerance. So in this slide we will talk about the criteria for diagnosis of diabetes mellitus. So one individual with the symptoms of diabetes plus random blood glucose concentration of 200 mg per deciliter or fasting plasma glucose of 126 mg per deciliter or one HbA1c of 6.5% or more, and also 2-hour plasma glucose of 200 mg during an oral glucose tolerance test. So one individual is fulfilling any of these criteria is diagnostic for diabetes mellitus. Also please take a note that random is defined as without regard to time since the last meal. Fasting is defined as no calorie intake for at least 8 hours. HbA1c test should be performed in a laboratory using a method approved by the National Glycohemoglobin Standardization Program. Also OGTT, that is oral glucose tolerance test, should be performed using a glucose load containing the equivalent of 75 gram of anhydrous glucose which is dissolved in the water, right? And this is not recommended for routine clinical use, right? This is for diagnosis purpose only. So now we will talk about the screening for type 2 diabetes mellitus and pre-diabetes. So whenever we do screening for diabetes, majority of patients are asymptomatic and are unaware that they have diabetes mellitus. Type 2 diabetes mellitus may be present for up to a decade before diagnosis. Also some individuals with type 2 diabetes mellitus have one or more diabetes specific complications at the time of diagnosis. So when we talk about the summary of major recommendations, then the blood glucose rather than HbA1c should be used to diagnose type 1 diabetes mellitus in symptomatic individuals. Also antibody panel is recommended only either in the setting of a clinical research study or in a first degree family members with type 1 diabetes mellitus, as we know that type 1 diabetes mellitus is associated with autoimmune reactions, means there are formation of some antibodies against the body itself and that destroys the islet beta cells of pancreas. So what are the criteria for testing for diabetes mellitus or pre-diabetes in asymptomatic adult? So one should be tested for diabetes if he or she is overweight or obese with one or more risk factors. In those without the risk factors, testing should be begin at 45 years of age. So to test for diabetes, generally we use HbA1c, fasting plasma glucose, 2-hour or 75 gram oral glucose tolerance test, and this testing should be repeated at least every 3 years. So after diagnosis, we will talk about the management of diabetes. So the overall goal to treat one type 1 or type 2 diabetes mellitus patient is to eliminate the symptoms related to hyperglycemia, to reduce or eliminate the long-term micro and macrovascular complications of diabetes, and to allow the patient to achieve a normal lifestyle. Also please take a note that the symptoms of diabetes usually resolve when the plasma glucose is 200 mg per deciliter. Thus the most diabetes treatment focuses on the achieving the second and the third goals. So in this slide we will talk about the treatment goals for patients with diabetes. So when we talk about the glycemic control, one HbA1c of less than 7%, preprandial capillary plasma glucose of 80 to 130 mg per deciliter, peak postprandial capillary plasma glucose of less than 180 mg per deciliter is the target. And when we talk about the blood pressure, then of course less than 140 by 90 millimeter of mercury should be the target in diabetic patient. And in lipids, low density lipoprotein, that is LDL, of 100 mg per deciliter, high density lipoprotein, that is HDL, of 40 mg per deciliter in men and 50 mg per deciliter in women, right? And triglyceride of 150 mg per deciliter is the target. Being one medical student, we must know about like both the milligram per deciliter and millimole per liter. But being a patient, it's okay if you remember about the 80 and 130 milligram per deciliter. Okay. So the guidelines for ongoing and comprehensive medical care for patients with diabetes are optimal and individualized glycemic control, self-monitoring of blood glucose, HbA1c testing at least 2 to 4 times a year, also patient education in diabetes management annually and diabetes self-management education and support, medical nutrition therapy and education annually, also annual or biannually eye examinations, and foot examination 1 to 2 times per year by physician and daily by patient, screening of diabetic nephropathy annually, blood pressure measurement quarterly, lipid profile and serum creatinine estimated GFR annually, influenza, pneumococcal and hepatitis B immunizations, and also consideration to use antiplatelet therapy. So now we will talk about the detection and prevention of complications related to diabetes. So a comprehensive eye examination should be performed by a qualified optometrist or ophthalmologist, because many type 2 diabetes mellitus patients have had asymptomatic diabetes for several years before the diagnosis. So the American Diabetes Association ADA recommends the following ophthalmologic examinations for diabetic patients. So please take a note, this is very important for exams. So individual with type 1 diabetes mellitus should have an initial eye examination within 5 years of diagnosis. And individual with type 2 diabetes mellitus should have an initial eye examination at the time of diagnosis. Women with diabetes mellitus who are pregnant or expecting pregnancy should have an eye examination prior to conception and during the first trimester. And if the eye exam is normal, then repeat the examination in 2 to 3 years is appropriate. So now we will talk about the patient education about diabetes mellitus, nutrition and exercise. So diabetes self-management education DSME and diabetes self-management support, that is DSMS, right? These are very important for one diabetes patient. So all patients with diabetes should participate in DSME and DSMS both at the time of diagnosis and as needed therefore, because effective self-management, improved clinical outcomes, health status and quality of life are key outcomes of DSME and DSMS and should be measured as part of care in diabetic patient. Also DSME and DSMS should be patient-centric, respectful, responsive to individual patient preference, needs and values that could guide clinical decisions. As in last slide, we talk about the patient education about diabetes mellitus, nutrition and exercise. So we will discuss them one by one. So first we will talk about the diabetes education. So the role of one diabetes educator is very important in diabetic patient. And one diabetes educator is a healthcare professional like one nurse, dietitian, pharmacist with specialized patient education skills like self-monitoring of blood glucose, urine ketone monitoring in type 1 diabetes mellitus patient especially, insulin administration, guidelines for diabetes management during illness, prevention and management of hypoglycemia, foot and skin care, diabetes management before, during and after exercise, and to modify the risk factors in diabetic patient. So after education about the diabetes, the disease itself, now we will talk about the education about nutrition in diabetic patient. So we will talk about the weight loss diet in pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes patient. Generally we give hypocaloric diet, that is low in carbohydrate in diet. So we monitor carbohydrate intake as record to calories. Also sucrose containing foods may be consumed with adjustments in insulin dose but minimize the intake. Also amount of carbohydrate determined by the estimating grams of carbohydrate in diet, especially in type 1 diabetes mellitus patient. Use glycemic index to predict how consumption of a particular food may affect the glucose control. Also fructose preferred over sucrose or starch in diabetic patients. So when we talk about the fat in diet of one diabetic patient, we should minimize the trans fat consumption. Mediterranean style diet which is rich in monounsaturated fatty acids is always better for diabetic patient. Also, a good component of protein should be there in diet of one diabetic patient. The other components like dietary fiber, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, dairy products, and sodium intake are as advised as for general populations. Non-nutrient sweeteners and routine supplements of vitamins, antioxidants, or trace elements are not advised in diabetic patients. So after patient education about diabetes and nutrition, now we will talk about the patient education about physical activity or exercise. So an adult with type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus must have a moderate to vigorous activity of at least 150 plus minutes per week over at least 3 days per week with no more than 2 consecutive days without exercise. Shorter durations like minimum 75 minutes per week of vigorous intensity or interval training may be sufficient for younger and more physically fit individuals. Resistance training in 2 to 3 sessions per week on non-consecutive days is also good for diabetic patients. Apart from exercise, we must advise the patient to decrease the amount of time spent in daily sedentary behavior. Like prolonged sitting should be interrupted every 30 minutes for better blood glucose benefits. Flexibility training and balance training are recommended 2 to 3 times per week for older adults with diabetes like yoga and tai chi. So the other recommendations in diabetes patients are smoking cessation, as we know that smoking with diabetes is always associated with high risk for cardiovascular events. Also immunization like hepatitis vaccine in all unvaccinated adults with diabetes and age 19 to 59, pneumococcal vaccine, influenza vaccine every year, and also psychosocial care like patients' attitude towards the disease itself and also about the treatment, expectations for medical management and outcomes which affect the mood and quality of life, and social and emotional support. So now we will talk about the pharmacological treatment of diabetes. So first we will talk about the type 1 diabetes. So most people with type 1 diabetes should be treated with the multiple daily injections of prandial and basal insulin or continuous subcutaneous insulin infusions. Also consider educating patients with type 1 diabetes on matching prandial insulin dose to carbohydrate intake, pre-meal blood glucose, and anticipated activity. Most patients with type 1 diabetes should use insulin analogs to reduce hypoglycemia risk. So now we will talk about the pharmacological treatment about type 2 diabetes. So if not contraindicated and if tolerated, then metformin is the preferred initial pharmacological agent for type 2 diabetes. Also please take a note that long-term use of metformin is associated with the vitamin B12 deficiency. Also consider insulin therapy with or without additional agent in patients with newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes mellitus who are markedly asymptomatic and who are having like elevated blood glucose levels of more than equal to 300 mg per deciliter or one SB1C of more than equal to 10%. So this is the criteria in type 2 diabetes mellitus patient when we must go for insulin therapy. Also don't delay insulin initiation in patients not achieving the glycemic goals. So in this slide, you can see that we can manage one type 2 diabetes patient with the proper individualized glycemic control with proper diet, exercise and medication. Also by treating the associated conditions like dyslipidemia, hypertension, obesity, CSD, coronary heart disease, and also by screening and managing the complications of diabetes like retinopathy, cardiovascular disease, nephropathy, neuropathy and other complications. So in this slide, we will learn that how to approach a type 2 diabetic patient for better glycemic control. So first we will go for individualized glycemic control. In that we'll advise the patient for medical nutrition therapy, increased physical activity and weight loss with metformin. As we know that metformin is the initial preferred pharmacological treatment for type 2 diabetes mellitus. So after all this, we will reassess the SB1C. If not under control, then we'll give combination therapy like metformin plus some other second agent. Then again we will reassess the SB1C of that patient. Is still not in control, then we will give combination therapy like metformin with 2 other agents on the place of 1 or insulin with metformin. So these 2 approach we have then. So after that also we will reassess the HbA1c that our patient is under control or not. So in this slide we will talk about the agents used for the treatment of type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus. So first we will talk about the oral agents like biguanides. The example is metformin and they decrease the hepatic glucose production. Alpha glucosidase inhibitors like acarbox, miglitol and voglibos and they decrease the GI glucose absorption. Then DPP-4 inhibitors like alogliptin, enagliptin, saxagliptin, linagliptin and they prolong the endogenous GLP-1 action. Also, we have insulin secretagogues like sulfonylureas and non-sulfonylureas, including the glibenclamide, glipizide, gliclazide, netiglinide, repaglinide, right? So they increase the insulin secretion. Then we will talk about the SGLT2 inhibitors like sodium glucose cotransporter 2 inhibitors like canagliflozin, dapagliflozin, right? So they increase the urinary glucose excretion. And lastly, we will talk about the thiazolidinediones, right? Like rosiglitazones, pioglitazones. So they decrease the insulin resistance and increase the glucose utilization. Please also read about the advantage, disadvantage and contraindications of all these agents, since this is very important while treating the patients. So in this slide, we will talk about the parenteral agents used to treat type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus. So let's start with the amylin agonist. The example is pramlintide, which slow the gastric emptying and also decrease the glucagon action. GLP-1 receptor agonists like exenatide and liraglutide, which increase the insulin action, decrease glucagon action, also slow the gastric emptying and satiety. Insulin, which increase the glucose utilization, decrease hepatic glucose production and other anabolic actions. We will read about insulin more in next two slides. Then we will talk about the medical nutrition therapy and physical activity like low calorie and low fat diet and exercise, which increase the insulin secretion and decrease the insulin resistance. So in this slide, we will talk about the insulin therapy in type 2 diabetes patient. As we discussed in the previous slides, that one individual with HbA1c of 10% and more, and also with plasma glucose of 300 mg per deciliter or more. In that patient, we generally use insulin for the thyroid glycemic control. The progressive nature of type 2 diabetes mellitus should be regularly and objectively explained to the diabetic patients. Avoid using insulin as a treat and describing it as a failure or punishment for the patient. Give patients a self-titration algorithm for better administration and also for better diabetes control. So in this slide, you can see the different preparations of insulin, which are generally used in type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus treatment, like short-acting, which include the aspartate, glulicin, lispro, and regular; long-acting, which include the detamere, glargine, and NPH. NPH means neutral protamine hagedron, a crystalline suspension of insulin with protamine and zinc, which gives the intermediate-acting insulin. Also, combination of insulins like long-acting and short-acting put together in 75-25, 70-30, 50-15, 70-30 ratio for better diabetes control. So in this slide, we will talk about the hypertension and blood pressure treatment in diabetic patient. So the target VP in diabetic patient is less than 140 by 19 mm of mercury. Treatment for hypertension should include one ACE inhibitor, one ARB, angiotensin second receptor blocker, thiazide-like diuretic, and lastly dihydropyridine calcium channel blocker. Please take a note that ACE inhibitor and ARB are the first line treatment for hypertension in patients with diabetes and proteinuria. So after hypertension and blood pressure treatment in diabetic patient, now we will talk about the lipid management in diabetic patient. So intensify lifestyle therapy and optimize glycemic control is recommended for patients with triglyceride level of 150 mg per deciliter and more, or HDL cholesterol less than 40 mg per deciliter in men and less than 50 mg per deciliter in women. Also for patients with fasting triglyceride level of 500 mg per deciliter and more, evaluate for the secondary causes and consider medical therapy to rescue the risk of pancreatitis. Commonly used statins in diabetic patients are rosuvastatin, atorvastatin, and simvastatin. So this is all about the diabetes mellitus. Thank you so much for listening, and please don't forget to subscribe the channel for all latest updates. Stay safe. Thank you so much.